The X-37B is a fully automatic spaceplane that lands itself. It was once a NASA design to replace space shuttles, then part of a secretive Pentagon research agency.
Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket.
The Air Force launched this one 15 months ago. It's officially a billion-dollar program testing reusable unmanned spaceships, but it also hauls highly classified cargo. There's even speculation the spaceship may be aiming sensitive cameras and sensors toward Earth, paving the way for a new generation of robot spies.
It could be a space bomber, it could be a space fighter, it could be for engineering tests.
There are plenty of theories.
I think the ultimate purpose for this plane is to confuse the Chinese, to cause them to waste money responding to things that it might be, to keep them guessing.
X-37B 会
X-37B
叫 X-37B 空
X-37B。
与此同时，中国研制神龙空天飞机的消息也受到美军专家的密切关注。美国海军军
let's talk a little bit about the rumblings of this so-called drone that they could send into space. Is there any truth to this, or is this just maybe part of their PR stunt to send a message to the rest of the world? Does anyone know?
Calling it a drone, it's a spacecraft. It happens to have the ability to re-enter and fly like an airplane. But that's not much different than what's existed before. It's really hard to say. If you look at the X-37B, which is the American version, it's about 3 times larger than Shenlong. It's really hard to say what the advantages of it is from a cost-benefit perspective as compared with conventional ways of launching satellites or even bringing something back down from orbit, using a capsule and a parachute. It's not really clear that this is being looked at from a hard cost-benefit point of view. It's rather more of a symbol, and I think it's a symbol for the Chinese as well, that they can do the same thing, that they can build a space plane. Why you want to build a space plane isn't as clear.
Dekai, what do you think?
It's not clear whether it exists.
That's right.
You thought what already existed?
It's not clear that the space plane actually exists.
The Shenlong.
Yes.
Yeah, one picture.
Yep.
The X-37B is about a quarter of the size of a space shuttle. The plane runs off of solar power, which allows it to stay in orbit for hundreds of days. The launch is set for 1 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, but we know a little more about the mission than that because it's been kept top secret. United Launch Alliance is supplying the Atlas V rocket that will carry the spaceplane, also known as the Orbital Test Vehicle, into orbit. ULA lists the key objectives of the program include demonstration and validation of fault-tolerant, autonomous reentry and landing, lightweight high-temperature structures and landing gear, thermal protection system, and lightweight electromechanical light systems. CNN's Chad Myers takes a guess as to what he thinks the mission might be.
Why is it such a secret?
Well, because we don't know what's up there. And they don't want us to know. We don't know whether it's some kind of laser thing. We don't know if it's weather modification. We doubt that. But we also don't know whether it's just some kind of special cameras that they're looking down, working on, training, see if they work.
And Ozzy Osbourne, who runs SpaceLaunchInfo.com, tells Bay News 9 he thinks the mission could be focused on Earth, not space.
It may be a spy mission, it may be just a research mission. There might be some things they want to know.
The X-37B program was launched in 1999 by NASA, but the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency took over shortly after. The mission is classified, and PC Magazine points out the secrecy has alarmed some. The revelation that the Air Force has a space plane caused some concern among foreign governments, with some questioning whether the U.S. has deployed a space-trotting spy vehicle or a weapons platform for taking down satellites. PC Mag also says Air Force officials have tried to dispel those rumors.
January 11, 2007. The Chinese government used a ground-based medium-range ballistic missile to knock out one of its own aging weather satellites. The strike sends a clear message. The Chinese are fully capable of shooting down our satellites, too.
I think it was a game-changing situation because it was a sort of event that had never been seen before.
Modern warfare relies heavily on satellites, so a first strike in future conflicts will likely start in space.
I think it is realistic to see space as an element of future conflicts.
But military planners would need a way to attack satellites without leaving evidence of foul play. Experts believe this could be how they do it. It's an unmanned classified spacecraft called the X-37B. it has rarely been photographed. Spacecraft analysts suspect that the X-37B uses information gathered by the space fence to track foreign satellites, then attacks them. But wouldn't an obvious offensive strike start World War III? Aviation expert Bill Sweetman thinks this potential space weapon would use more clandestine techniques than rockets or missiles.
One of the more interesting theories I've heard is that if you could spray a satellite with non-reflective material, a paint-like material, in many cases, you would cause it to overheat.
If a satellite overheats, its sensitive instruments can malfunction, sending it off course and maybe plunging to Earth. There's an advantage to this kind of attack. It's almost impossible to prove who was behind it.
If a satellite goes bad, you can't go out and inspect the wreckage and say, hey, somebody interfered with this, because all the physical signs of anything that was done are destroyed when it re-enters the atmosphere.
Clandestine operations like this could be happening right now. The X-37B was first launched in April 2010. Its missions and orbits are still top secret. Coming up, some amateur observers have figured out a way to track the X-37B by intercepting signals from the space fence.
This is one of the captures of the X-37B spaceplane.
The space fence is a top-secret military weapon that most Americans would not give a second glance. Experts have reason to believe that it works with secret spacecraft like the X-37B to spy on and destroy enemy satellites. And now some amateur observers have turned the tables and are spying on the X-37B. Mike Coletta is an engineer who lives near Colorado Springs, Colorado. His favorite hobby, tracking space junk from his home. Mike has figured out a way to use the space fence to see what could be a secret operation in space.
Pretty amazing that someone can actually listen to the U.S. Air Force space fence, hearing satellites going through that space fence with very little equipment and knowledge. Once the signal is up in the air through those transmitters, it's up for grabs, just like any radio frequency signal is that's transmitted.
Mike's home-built tracking system looks more hodgepodge than high-tech. Believe it or not, he built his long-range antenna with coat hangers and coaxial TV cables. To pull down the signal from the space fence, he used mathematical formulas found easily on the internet.
And it doesn't talk about space fence specific, but there's formulas that you can put in for the space fence frequency to get this type of antenna built.
Inside, Mike uses a specially modified scope to convert the signals into something he can see. To the untrained eye, signals look like static, but Mike shows how the radar image of orbiting objects appears on his screen.
This is a capture of the space shuttle docked with the International Space Station, and it was one of the best catches I think I've ever caught.
More impressive is that Mike has been able to see something top secret, something few people have ever seen, the X-37B.
Well, I immediately went in there and started plotting to see when is this thing going to be coming through the space fence. And lo and behold, there it was, and I captured it a number of times. What it's doing up there, I don't really know.
Mike has tracked the X-37B flying close to Chinese satellites, but there has been no evidence that it tampered with them. November 2011, a malfunction makes the world take notice. The Russia Space Agency launches a probe bound for Mars named Phobos Grunt. Soon after launch, Phobos Grunt is crippled by solar panel failure. All communication is lost. The 14-ton spacecraft begins a slow descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. Phobos Grunt becomes one of the heaviest space relics ever to fall back to Earth, dangerously out of control. But could the U.S. have been responsible from the beginning?
If the U.S. had wanted to sabotage Phobos Grunt or another satellite like it, they could have used the space fence and other sensors to get an accurate determination of its orbit, and then attacked it by jamming the ability to communicate with the satellite.
It's actually counter to our interests that the Russians lost control of Phobos Grunt. We all are at risk because we've got this satellite out there that nobody has control of.
As Phobos Grunt plunges back to Earth, the U.S. military uses the space fence to track it, ready to blow it apart. Some believe that the U.S. was trying to cover up evidence of foul play. Ultimately, Phobos Grunt breaks apart over the Pacific Ocean. The Russian Space Agency blames the U.S. for the failure of their probe. Nothing is recovered, so there is no way to know if the Russian satellite was tampered with. The U.S. Air Force acknowledges that the space fence is detecting, tracking, and cataloging space junk, but unanswered questions remain about its role as a weapon.
There's really no way for me to characterize for you what we do that's of a classified nature.
If there is an emerging war in space, the victor must have the high ground. Top secret space fence will play a major role, high in the sky.